You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are. Eckhart Tolle. The Power of Now. This book is really meaningful to me because it has helped me a lot when I first discovered spirituality. When I first discovered this path, I discovered meditation. And throughout meditation, I was able to silence my mind. And throughout this process, I was able to feel that there is a silence awareness within each one of us, that as you maintain that silence, that there is an awareness that starts guiding you through life. Once I discovered this awareness within me, I wanted to visit all the teachers that teach this type of understanding. So I started visiting all the teachers. I went to Jared Cornfield. I saw Jared Cornfield live. Then I went to David Hawkins a couple of times, and many Buddhist monks meditated with them, which confirmed that either I'm not going crazy, but that this type of studies does believe in that there is a way out. There is a way out to release all this negativity that we are kind programmed to believe. Around 4 years ago, Eckhart Tolle came to visit Miami, and I went to see Eckhart Tolle live. And this man sat on a chair with no books, with no pamphlets, with no cards. And for 2.5 hours, he spoke about the ego with this script that he had in mind, like constantly aware. And seeing him without no script and no plan on what to talk about, but yet he entertained us like over 7,000 people for about how to let go of the ego. That totally inspired me, and it totally encouraged me. Plus, he also support the work. So in this book, I created a podcast from this book, which explained really well how to let go of the ego, how to become more aware of who you are. The power of now, the power of maintaining your focus in the present moment, which whenever you come back to this present moment is going to present you the solutions for whatever problem you have if you are present with yourself. I hope you all enjoy this video. Please don't forget to share your comments. If you have any suggestions, I'm willing to study with everyone. I will be making live videos, so share and like. And if you read the book, please watch this video, which is going to give you some nuggets of wisdom that you might not have gotten while reading the book. I hope you all enjoyed the book. Thank you for watching. I see you on the next one.
All right, so are you ready to dive deep? Today, we're going to be taking on Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Oh yeah, The Power of Now.
Huge book.
This book's kind of a spiritual rock star.
It is, yeah.
Topping those bestseller lists, even over in India.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest,
Yeah.
is a place that most of us think of as having enlightenment practices down pat.
I know.
You know.
It is kind of fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
You'd think they'd, I don't know,
Yeah.
have this whole living in the moment thing figured out already, but clearly Tolle's message, it's resonating globally.
Yeah.
It's hitting something.
It is, exactly.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, let's try to get to the heart of this whole Power of Now thing.
Okay.
What are the core ideas, and how does Tolle guide us toward that place of presence?
Well, one of the most fundamental points I think that Tolle makes is that our own minds,
Okay.
with all that constant thinking, are actually the biggest roadblock to enlightenment.
He describes it as this relentless chatter, this constant, going on and going on,
Yeah.
that prevents us from experiencing true inner stillness.
Okay.
That quiet.
So it's like having that roommate who never stops talking, even when you're trying to meditate. We all know that type.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And it's not just annoying, it's actually blocking us from tapping into something incredibly valuable. Like, that story Tolle tells about the beggar sitting on a box of gold?
No.
So he's so caught up in his thoughts
Right.
and his worries that he never even thinks to look inside the box,
Wow.
completely missing the treasure that's right there,
Yeah.
just sitting on it.
Wow. Think about that in your own life for a second.
I know.
What treasures, peace, joy, clarity you might be missing because you're so focused on the mental noise?
Yeah,
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
it is. And then it gets even, I think, more intriguing
Yeah.
when Tolle suggests that most of us are essentially, get this, possessed by our minds.
Possessed.
Possessed.
That sounds a little intense.
Yeah.
Possessed.
He uses that word
Yeah.
to really drive home the point that this mental chatter
Right.
is not our true self.
Okay.
We've just become so identified
Yeah.
with it that we don't know any other way of being.
Yeah.
We think this is us, but it's not.
So how do we break free from this? How do we even begin to separate ourselves from all that mental noise?
That's where the practice of watching the thinker comes in. It's about, simply becoming aware of the mental movies and soundtracks
All the mental movies.
that are playing in our heads,
Yeah.
observing them without judgment, just watching.
So not necessarily trying to stop the thoughts altogether,
No.
rather realizing that we are not those thoughts,
Right.
that there's a deeper awareness beyond the mental chatter.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like stepping back, Mike, you're watching a movie. You're becoming an observer
Yeah.
of your own mind.
Right.
And Tolle stresses, that finding peace isn't about having fewer thoughts,
Right.
but about changing
Right.
how we relate to them.
Okay. Now that's a perspective I think I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
So where do emotions fit into all of this?
Oh, emotions. Yeah, that's a good point.
They're not just thoughts, are they?
No, they're not just thoughts. No. Tolle sees emotions, I think, as the body's reaction to the mind, often reflecting our mental state even more honestly than our surface thoughts do.
Oh, okay. So even if I'm telling myself everything is fine, but I'm feeling anxious?
That's where the deeper awareness lies. It's almost like
Okay.
our emotions are this more primal, honest language that sometimes contradicts the stories our minds are telling us.
Right.
And here's where things get really interesting. Tolle argues that if there's a conflict between your thoughts and your emotions, the emotion is often closer to the truth of your current state. It's the body speaking up. This is how I'm really feeling.
Okay. Now that's insightful. It's like our emotions are a compass,
Yes,
pointing us toward what's really going on beneath the surface.
exactly.
Okay.
And that leads us to something Tolle calls the pain body.
The pain body. What exactly is this pain body? It sounds a bit ominous.
I know. Well, he describes it as this accumulation of past emotional pain we carry around with us, almost like a separate entity, like an entity.
You mean like emotional baggage? Everyone talks about emotional baggage.
It's more than just baggage, it's an active force.
Yeah.
Tolle suggests it can actually become almost autonomous,
Wow.
influencing our thoughts and behaviors in ways we're not even aware of.
So it's not just memories, it's like this energy field
It is.
that can sabotage our happiness.
It can.
Yeah.
It can really, almost like a parasite in a way, feeding off of us.
Yeah.
He uses some really vivid descriptions, comparing it to like a whining child or even a destructive monster
Oh, wow.
that causes negativity, illness, even drives some people to, pretty extreme measures.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack. It feels a little bleak, to be honest. So how do we deal with this pain body? Do we try to ignore it? Fight it?
Well, ignoring it won't work.
Uh.
The pain body, Tolle says, feeds on attention. It wants to perpetuate itself. It wants to keep going.
Right.
It'll try to trick us back into identifying with it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is me. This is who I am.
Yeah.
So giving it energy just makes it stronger.
So we need to become aware of it,
Yes.
observe it, and maybe even confront it directly.
Yeah.
But how do we even start to disentangle ourselves from something so deeply ingrained?
Well, that ties into another key concept, the ego. Tolle suggests the ego, this false sense of self we create through identifying with our thoughts, is fundamentally insecure
Okay.
and lives in a state of fear.
So even if everything in my life is seemingly going well,
Yeah.
my ego is still looking for things to worry about.
And that fear is constantly transmitted to the body, keeping us in a state of unease, preventing true peace.
It sounds like a vicious cycle. The mind creates the ego generates fear, and that fear just fuels more negativity and anxiety.
Precisely. And this is the trap that Tolle believes we can break free from. But it requires a fundamental shift in consciousness,
Okay.
a shift into the power of now.
Okay. So we've talked about the mind, the pain body, the ego, lots of obstacles to overcome.
Yeah.
But how do we actually make that shift into the present moment? Where do we even begin?
Well, that's what we're going to explore next. How to tap into that transformative power of the now.
So, okay, we've laid the groundwork. The mind, the ego, the pain body, all these forces working against us.
Right.
Finding that inner peace.
Yeah.
But how does all of this play out in our relationships?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Tolle doesn't shy away from pointing out that unless we're able to access this state of presence, all relationships, especially intimate ones, are going to be fundamentally flawed.
That might sound a little harsh. I mean, aren't there tons of happy couples out there? Surely not every relationship is doomed.
He, I think, acknowledges those seemingly perfect honeymoon phases, those moments when everything feels blissful and effortless. But he suggests those are often temporary states. You know, eventually those deeper patterns emerge. You know, arguments, conflicts, those little resentments, maybe even bigger issues, they start to creep in.
So even if things start out feeling magical, those lovey-dovey phases are almost always going to be disrupted.
Yeah, it's not about saying love is an illusion, but rather recognizing that relationships are constantly evolving, you know? And if we're not bringing awareness to those deeper dynamics, things can get messy. Tolle suggests that most love relationships actually become love-hate relationships.
Love-hate.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? I think most of us have experienced those ups and downs in relationships, but to call them love-hate seems pretty extreme.
Well, he observes that it's actually considered normal, like normal for couples to swing between these polarities, sometimes for years. And sometimes those swings can get pretty intense.
So we're constantly bouncing between these extremes.
Yeah.
And even though it's causing pain, we keep doing it. What's the point of that?
I don't know. Some couples actually get addicted to the drama. The intensity of those highs and lows keeps them feeling alive, but it's not true intimacy. And if those scales tip too far towards the negative, if those cycles become too destructive, the relationship is likely to fall apart.
Okay, that's a bit bleak, isn't it? So is Tolle saying we should just avoid relationships altogether? Is that the only way to find true peace?
No, not necessarily. He believes that relationships can actually be incredibly powerful opportunities for growth, but it requires both partners to be willing to do the inner work, to cultivate that presence, that awareness that we've been talking about.
So maybe it's less about finding the perfect partner and more about becoming a more conscious individual ourselves. Is that what he's getting at?
Yes. He challenges this whole idea that we need to find someone to complete us, that our happiness or salvation depends on some future event or another person.
Right, like finding our other half. But Tolle's saying that true fulfillment has to come from within, not from someone else.
Exactly. He argues that true salvation, if I want to use that word, is an inner experience, a state of freedom from fear and lack. And that's available to us right now, regardless of our relationship status.
So whether you're single or coupled up, the key is to bring that presence into your life, into this moment.
Yeah.
Don't wait for a relationship to magically fix you.
Right. Tolle says there's nothing we can acquire or achieve in the future
Right.
that will bring us closer to that state of wholeness than we are right now.
Yeah.
That's a powerful reminder.
Yeah, it is. But let's get back to those destructive relationship patterns we were talking about, those love-hate cycles. If we're not supposed to just avoid relationships, how do we actually break free from those cycles?
Tolle believes the key lies in awareness and acceptance. You know, he suggests that when we stop investing our sense of self in our thoughts and emotions,
Okay.
the mind loses its grip on us. We can see those patterns more clearly and choose to respond differently. It's like we're not so reactive anymore.
So instead of trying to control our partners or force the relationship to be a certain way, we need to learn to let go.
Yes, surrender. And he argues that the most powerful way to create positive change in a relationship is to accept your partner exactly as they are, without judgment or the need to change them.
Wow. That's a lot easier said than done, I think, you know?
It is.
I think most of us are guilty of trying to mold our partners into what we think they should be, but Tully's saying that just creates more resistance and conflict.
It does. It does. That behavior comes from the ego, that part of us that's afraid of letting go. But when we choose acceptance, when we move beyond those ego-driven games, the clinging and the need to control, something amazing can happen.
So we stop seeing ourselves as victims or perpetrators, and we can just be present with each other, flaws and all.
That's the idea. Tolle envisions these relationships where both partners are present, accepting, and able to communicate openly and honestly without all the drama and manipulation.
It sounds almost utopian, like something that only exists in fairy tales. Is it really possible to create relationships like that in the real world?
It's definitely challenging, but Tolle offers some guidance on how to move in that direction. And a lot of it comes back to dealing with that pain body we talked about earlier. As long as we're carrying around all that unresolved hurt, it's going to seep into our relationships no matter how hard we try to hide it.
Right, we were talking about how that pain body can manifest as negativity, resentment, all those things that can really poison a relationship.
Exactly. And Tolle suggests that instead of trying to ignore it or push it down, we need to become aware of it, observe it, and ultimately transmute it into consciousness.
So it's about facing our pain, feeling it fully, and allowing it to move through us, to transform.
Yes, and this is where the idea of surrender becomes particularly relevant in relationships. When we surrender to our pain without judgment or resistance, it loses its grip on us.
So in this context, surrender means accepting our own pain, accepting our partner's pain, and even accepting the imperfections of the relationship itself.
Yeah.
It's not about giving up or lowering our standards, but about approaching the whole thing with a more open and compassionate heart.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to put it. And Tolle emphasizes that no relationship is perfect. There will always be challenges, disagreements, moments of friction. Embracing that messiness, seeing it as an opportunity for growth is a crucial part of the journey.
It's like those challenges become the fuel for our own evolution, both individually and as a couple.
Exactly. And when both partners are committed to that process of awareness, acceptance, and surrender, something truly beautiful can emerge.
Instead of reflecting back each other's pain and unconsciousness, the relationship can actually become this mirror for the love and presence that we're cultivating within ourselves.
That's the transformative potential that Tolle points to. When we're free from the grip of the pain body and the ego's need to control, our relationships can become expressions of the love that already exists within us.
That's a beautiful image. But what about those situations where one partner is seemingly more enlightened or aware than the other?
Yeah.
Can those relationships work?
That's a great question, and one that Tolle addresses directly. He acknowledges that it can be very challenging. Living with someone who seems to have a greater sense of peace and presence can actually be quite threatening to the ego.
So the less aware partner might feel threatened by the other person's serenity or lack of reactivity. It almost throws their own patterns into sharper relief.
Exactly. Remember, the ego thrives on problems, conflict, and separation. So when its usual tactics of control and resistance don't work, it can get pretty reactive.
It's like the ego is trying to pick a fight, but the other person isn't engaging.
Exactly. And Tolle warns that the pain body can also become very active in these situations, demanding attention and feedback.
So the more aware partner needs to be extra compassionate and understanding, not just with their partner, but with themselves as well.
Absolutely. And they also need to be discerning. Tolle points out that some people might try to use spirituality to mask their own unconsciousness, claiming to be, enlightened when they're actually just emotionally shut down or withdrawn.
Right. True presence isn't about being emotionless or detached. It's about being present with the full spectrum of human experience, including the messy stuff.
Yes. And there's another layer to this whole relationship dynamic that Tolle explores. The unique challenges and opportunities that women face on this path.
Okay. That's something I'm really curious to hear more about.
Yeah.
What are some of his key insights there?
Well, one of his central arguments is that women, due to centuries of oppression and societal conditioning, often carry a heavier burden of emotional pain than men do.
So it's not just individual pain, but the kind of collective trauma that's been passed down through generations.
Exactly. He refers to this as the collective female pain body.
Wow.
And suggests it can manifest in many ways: emotional sensitivity, relationship challenges, even physical ailments. It's not about blaming women, but about acknowledging this deeper layer of suffering that many women are working through.
So how does Tolle suggest women approach this? Is it just about awareness and acceptance, like we've been talking about?
He emphasizes those practices, but he also points to menstruation as a particularly potent time for spiritual practice.
Wait, menstruation as spiritual practice? That's not something you hear every day.
It's a unique perspective. Tolle encourages women to use that time to become more conscious of the pain body, to observe it and allow it to to transform.
So instead of just giving in to those usual mood swings and discomfort, women can actually use their cycles to deepen their awareness and connect with their inner strength.
Yeah, it can be a really powerful time.
That's pretty empowering.
It is. And he emphasizes the importance of men being supportive during that time, holding space for their partners, and recognizing that those emotional fluctuations, they're not the woman's true self. It's the pain body expressing itself.
So it's a shared journey, a dance between the masculine and feminine, where both partners are supporting each other's growth and evolution.
Beautifully put. And while we're on the topic of relationships, Tolle also addresses the unique challenges and opportunities faced by gay people on the path to enlightenment.
Oh, I'm curious to hear his perspective on that.
Yeah.
What does he have to say?
He suggests that being gay can be both a help and a hindrance to enlightenment. On one hand, it can force you to question societal norms and develop a stronger sense of individuality. You're not automatically conforming to what's expected of you.
So being an outsider can actually make you more conscious and aware.
Yes. But he also cautions against creating a new identity based solely on your sexual orientation. That can just lead to another form of ego attachment.
So it's not about labeling yourself, but about embracing your uniqueness while also recognizing that shared humanity we all have.
Exactly. Tolle encourages us to move beyond all labels and identities, to connect with that essence of who we are, which is pure consciousness.
So what you're saying is that Tolle's vision of enlightened relationships is about so much more than just romantic love. It's about this deeper connection to ourselves, to each other, and to the present moment. It's about waking up to a more expansive way of being in the world.
That's a beautiful summary. And for Tolle, relationships are a powerful path to spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
An opportunity to transcend the ego's limitations and experience the fullness of being.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm starting to see how The Power of Now is so much more than just a self-help book. It's really a profound exploration of consciousness, relationships, and the nature of reality.
I agree. And there's one more key aspect of Tolle's teachings that I think ties all of this together. The idea of transforming suffering into peace. But I think that deserves its own dedicated deep dive.
Yeah, you're right. That's a big one. And I have to say, this conversation has already got me thinking differently about my own life, my relationships, and my own potential for growth. I'm definitely eager to explore this idea of transforming suffering. It feels really relevant, especially given everything we've been discussing.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. The mind, the ego, the pain body, relationships, and now it feels like we're getting to what feels like the heart of the matter, transforming suffering into peace.
It is a big one. It's a big promise, but is it actually possible?
That's the question.
And if so, how do we even do it? How do we get there?
It's a profound idea, and it really gets to the core of, I think, Tolle's message.
Yeah.
He suggests that much of our suffering is self-created.
Oh.
Not in a blaming way.
Right.
But in the sense that our resistance to what is, like our unwillingness to accept the present moment,
Okay.
is actually what generates and perpetuates so much of our pain.
So it's not necessarily the external circumstances themselves that are causing us to suffer, but it's our internal reaction.
It's the reaction.
Yeah. That makes sense, but it's also kind of a radical idea.
It is radical, and I think it requires a real shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Just think about it. How much energy
Yeah.
do we waste on judging, denying, blaming, clinging to the past, worrying about the future? All those mental and emotional patterns just keep us trapped in this cycle of negativity and pain.
It's like we're adding insult to injury, piling on an extra layer of suffering on top of whatever difficult situation we're already facing.
It's like, I'm not only going to be in this situation, but I'm going to beat myself up about it too.
Right.
Yeah, and Tolle argues that true peace, the kind that transcends even happiness and unhappiness, is only possible when we let go of that resistance, when we surrender to the present moment, even if it's unpleasant.
Okay, that word surrender keeps coming up.
It does.
But how do we actually surrender to something that feels so painful?
Good question.
I mean, it's not about, pretending everything's okay or forcing ourselves to be happy when we're not.
No, it's not about toxic positivity.
Yeah.
It's about accepting reality as it is without all the mental and emotional drama we usually add to it.
Yeah.
Tolle uses a great analogy of being stuck in the mud.
Okay.
Surrender doesn't mean you have to resign yourself to being stuck, but you do need to acknowledge the reality of the situation, the isness of it,
Right.
in order to take effective action.
So it's about saying yes to what is,
Yes.
even if it's not what we want it
Yes.
to be.
It is.
And then from that place of acceptance, we can start to, explore our options, make choices, take action.
Absolutely.
And sometimes even if we can't change the external situation,
Right.
we can still change our internal response to
Yes.
it. And that's where the power of the now comes in.
Yes.
Right? By bringing your attention fully to the present moment.
Yeah.
You disconnect from all that mental chatter
Right.
that fuels suffering.
Yeah.
It's like shifting your focus from the problem to the solution, from the past or future to the present moment where you actually have some agency.
Yes, you have some power there.
It's not about ignoring the difficulty.
Yeah.
It's about choosing where you focus your energy.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Now, Tolle is not naive. He knows that all this is easier said than done. Our minds are powerful, and they love to resist change.
Yes, they do.
They'll cling to those familiar patterns of suffering, even when they're clearly not serving us.
Right. Yeah. So how do we break free from that mental grip? How do we actually practice surrender when our minds are just screaming at us to resist?
It's hard.
It is.
He outlines a few steps. First, you have to become aware of the resistance.
Okay.
Notice when it arises, how it shows up in your body, your thoughts, your emotions.
Okay.
Pay attention to the stories your mind is creating about the situation, about yourself, about other people.
So it's about bringing that unconscious resistance into the light of awareness, where you can
Yes.
actually see it and examine it. You can't change what you're not aware of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And often just by bringing awareness to the resistance, you'll see how pointless it is.
Yeah.
It's not protecting you. It's not helping you solve the problem. It's just creating more suffering.
Right.
Oh, there you are again.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced this yourself? I know for me, when I can catch myself in that resistance loop,
Yeah.
just bringing awareness to it sometimes helps it kind of, dissolve.
Yeah.
It's like holding a magnifying glass to those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And they just kind of wither away
Yeah.
under the intensity of that attention.
I love that image.
Yeah.
That's great. And Tolle emphasizes, you can't be fully conscious and unhappy at the same time.
That's interesting.
Negativity and suffering, they thrive in the darkness of unconsciousness.
Okay.
When you shine the light of your awareness on them,
Right.
they lose their power.
It's like they can't survive in the light.
They can't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like vampires.
They
don't like the light.
So it's about cultivating this state of presence, this ability to just be here now
Yeah.
with whatever is arising without getting lost in those mental stories or emotional reactivity.
That's it. That's the key to transforming suffering into peace. It's not about denying or suppressing difficult emotions,
Okay.
but about allowing them to be there, feeling them fully, and observing them without judgment.
It's a different approach than what we're usually taught, isn't it? Most of us are conditioned to avoid pain, to seek pleasure, to seek comfort.
Right.
But Tolle's suggesting we can actually find peace
Yeah.
in the middle of those difficult experiences.
Yeah. That's the paradox.
Yeah.
True peace, he says, isn't the absence of difficult experiences. It's the ability to be present with them, to allow them to be,
Yeah.
without making them into a problem.
It's like developing this inner spaciousness, this capacity to hold whatever arises without getting overwhelmed or swept away by it.
Exactly.
It's in that space, that stillness,
Yeah.
that peace can emerge.
Beautifully said. And he even offers guidance on how to practice this in some of life's most challenging situations. Illness, loss, even our own mortality.
Now, those are some heavy topics.
They are.
How does Tolle suggest we apply this principle of surrender in those kinds of circumstances? I imagine it's so tempting
It is.
to just give up completely,
Yeah.
to succumb to despair.
He's very clear that surrender is not about giving up or resigning yourself to a fate that you don't want.
Okay.
It's about accepting the reality of the moment, even if it's painful, and then responding from that place of acceptance.
So if you're facing a serious illness, for example, surrender would mean acknowledging the reality of your condition
Yes.
without denying it or falling into despair. And then from that place of acceptance, you can focus on what you can do to heal and care for yourself, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he even suggests that surrender in those extreme situations can actually become a gateway to a profound transformation of consciousness.
Wait, so facing those difficult, even life-threatening situations
Yeah.
can actually help us awaken to a deeper reality.
Yeah, I know. Pretty counterintuitive.
It is.
But he argues that when we're stripped of our usual coping mechanisms, When the ego's illusions are shattered by the force of those experiences, we're forced to confront a deeper truth about who we are.
It's like the pain, the fear, the loss, they crack open the shell
Yes.
of our ego identification, and we get a glimpse of that unconditioned, eternal essence that lies within.
Yes.
It's almost like a spiritual rebirth.
That's a powerful way to describe it. And he suggests that this realization, this shift in consciousness, can bring a profound sense of peace, even in the midst of those difficult experiences.
Yeah.
You know, it's not happiness in the conventional sense,
Right.
but a deep serenity and acceptance.
Right.
That comes from connecting to something much vaster than our limited selves.
Oh, wow. This has been an incredibly rich exploration
It has.
of Tolle's work.
It's there's so much there.
Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing the power of now with new eyes, and it's definitely challenged me to look at my own life, my own suffering, in a whole new light.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I think Tolle would emphasize that, this is just the beginning.
Right.
The real power lies in the practice,
Yeah.
in the daily commitment to bringing our attention back to the present moment
Yeah.
again and again until it becomes our natural way of being in the world.
It's not a destination then, but a lifelong practice
Yeah.
of awakening to the fullness of life.
Yes.
Even amidst its inevitable challenges and sorrows.
Beautifully said. And that's perhaps the most empowering message of all.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait for things to be perfect or for our suffering to end
Right.
to experience peace. It's available to us right here, right now.
Yeah.
If we're willing to surrender to this present moment,
Yeah.
to say yes to what is, and allow life to unfold as it will.
That's a beautiful reminder and a perfect place to end our deep dive. What are your takeaways? What resonated with you most? Remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration of the power of now. Keep exploring, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep bringing your attention back to this precious present moment where true peace and transformation await.